Yeah, so I really enjoy Mount Pleasant and the connections that I have now. My uncle still lives there, my cousin. He's the deacon for First Baptist Church, so it's always great to see him in Mount Pleasant. Um, as I noticed riding down there, they're building two new houses down on Fairview Avenue, which is a change for Mount Pleasant. And as I go down and I think about the people that used to live there, and a lot of them have passed on now, and I look, my one cousin, Robert Durrell, he's still there. I just seen him last week. And as I cruise through, I think about Joe Taylor, he still lives there. So there's still some families there, even though I don't have tight connections with some of them. You know, when you see them, you always speak to them. And coming up the hill, Mount Henry Avenue, um, there's a lot of people that just aren't there anymore. As far as going down Mount Pleasant, my buddy Alan Brown, who I hung out with a lot in young days, because we used to always shine our cars out in front of his house. I mean, back then our cars weren't brand new, but they were always shiny and clean, and it was different back then. I mean, when I went to church, we were always, even as kids, shirt and tie, shiny shoes. Where back then, shining your shoes was a big thing, and being dressed real nice, which I kept that up, and I still like getting dressed up. So the change of Mount Pleasant is just modernization.
So you said that you still know some people that live there. Have you heard any of the complaints about like the college students and things like that? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, yes, I heard complaints. I mean, because basically, when you're in an older community, if you go to bed at 10 or 11, you expect to be quiet. You don't expect to hear a lot of rowdiness, which back in when I grew up, you didn't hear that at nighttime. At least not down in the bottom of Mount Pleasant, maybe on top of Upper Gulf Road. You might hear guys racing their cars or something like that. But yes, I heard about the college students and a lot of rackets. But that's how Mount Pleasant has changed. When we grew up, it was all families and kids and older people. So now it's an adjustment for the people, which I'm sure they're not too happy with. But that's what happens. You can get into a low income community and you can do those kind of things and get away with it. But if you're on a higher end community, people are going to put up a fight and they're going to do their best to keep you out.
Who has been the largest influence in your life?
Oh, in my younger days, of course, my mother and father started out number one. But the church meant a lot to me. We had Macy B. Hall, which was a real organizer. Not only was she in the church, right behind the church we had a community center. So we could go in the community center and do our homework after school. If we had problems, there was people there to help us. She had a library in there. Macy B. Hall was an exceptional lady, a very proud lady too. And she did her best to educate us, to train us, to make us act right. I can remember in Sunday school she played the piano, and we sang songs like "Joy to the World," and it's just people like that. Maisie B. Hall, Mrs. Fred Thomas, and Mrs. Oliver, and some of the ministers. There was a real community group. So in my younger days, Mount Pleasant pretty much had the influence on me. Even some of the parents would watch over us, and they would discipline us and or tell on us. So we knew that you only act so crazy around Mount Pleasant. But as I got older, my biggest influence when I became a steam fitter was Art Simons, which I was his apprentice. and he sort of less trained me. I was his apprentice, so I worked with him almost 7, 8 years, and so he spent a lot of time training me. And of course, he was an exceptional guy, so I had a good guy to learn from. And but he had passed on in the last couple of years suddenly, which has a negative effect because he didn't die a normal life. He was a card counter in Atlantic City, and he was in Atlantic City one night crossing the street and got hit by a car. So that was kind of upsetting to me. And they probably was one of the biggest influences in my life.
Would you say that religion has played a role in your life?
Religion has played a role in my life, especially as when I was younger. Just to give you some ground rules. I didn't stay in church steady when I got older. When I was younger, I mean in my teens. But as I got older, I started going back more and more. I used to take my mother to church, and she was happy when I took her to church, and I started going. Before you know it, I would go more than she would go. And what I enjoyed about church was just when I left church, I always felt better. I always felt happier. And now we have Reverend Grove, which the church is growing again. So now it's becoming a place where I see a lot of my friends that grew up in Mount Pleasant coming back to church now. So that's a good feeling. And it's a good feeling that people are doing the right thing by going to church, because they got some ground rules and they have some morals.
And what would you say some of your hobbies are?
Some of my hobbies, well, guitar is one of my hobbies because my family enjoys music. And my youngest brother, he plays the keyboard. He'll be playing in Jersey next Saturday in Mount Holly. He's a keyboard guy. But guitar is my hobby. Basketball, which I don't play like I used to anymore. I'm getting older. And riding my bike. I still ride my bike. I have a racing bike. I have a Cannondale racing bike. And I work on my cars. I do automotive work, just as a hobby, the brakes and minor stuff. And let's see, what are my other hobbies? Besides fishing, I still enjoy fishing. That's one of my hobbies. And I guess they were my main hobbies.
And since you talked about how much music is within your family, what would be your favorite type of music?
My favorite type of music, well, probably still rhythm and blues. We grew up on James Brown, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, which I don't know if you heard any of them. But now I'm playing a little jazz now, and I enjoy jazz on my guitar. But I think that jazz is starting to move in on me, and I'm trying to learn gospel now on my guitar, which I'm not good at yet, but I hope to one day play in the church with my brothers. My youngest brother, I'm not worried about him. Well, neither one of my brothers. My youngest brother, he minored in music in college, so I think he could pick up church songs pretty easily, gospel. And my oldest brother, he'll be on the bass, and I'm sure he can learn it pretty quickly. So what I'm actually doing now is looking online for songs that I think we could play that would sound good in the church. One of my cousins, Lisa, she can sing well, so we're trying to do it like a family thing. So she's a great singer, so I'm hoping one day that I can come up with a song and we all can go to church and play one day.
Do you have any traditions that are important to you and your family?
To my immediate family, our tradition is whoever's birthday it is, we always go out to dinner on that particular person's birthday. And with my brothers, we get together every Christmas, mostly on Christmas. We get together and we go out to dinner as a group. But now we have a tendency now to try to go to somebody's house because we get together and bring our guitars. My youngest brother has his keyboard, so we get to play music when we get together. So it's kind of like a nice family get together.
And growing up, did you have any experiences with racism?
Racism, when I was younger, not really, because we pretty much stayed in our community. But when I was in elementary school, there was no real problems there. I mean, we didn't even think about racism much then. I mean, we knew we were black, we knew the other kids were white, but we never, we all played together and never had any problems. And junior high school, I really can't remember any real racism problems going through school. Once I got older in the construction field, might have met some racism in construction, but that was it's a different group of guys and a different kind of people. So, but not enough to affect me in any negative way.
So basically, you would say that you are pretty strong-willed and you take it like it is.
I take it like it is. I mean, I'm my own man, and regardless of who you are or what you are, everybody's not going to like you, and I pretty much just move on from stuff like that. I have my agenda, what I want to get done. It's a little different when you're black. I mean, I was a foreman, and there weren't a lot of black steam fitters, but I pretty much was strong-willed, and when people would make me foreman, I would just be foreman, so I never really paid too much attention to anything like that.
Why is Mount Pleasant special to you?
Mount Pleasant's special to me because it's a place where we grew up, and all the kids were happy. We all played together. It was just a group thing. After school, we would come up on the playground behind the church. We would play football in the wintertime, or when it was cool out, or we would get together and play basketball. And it didn't matter what your skill level was. We all just got together and played and chose our teams, and everybody was happy just to get together. There used to be a lot of barbecues back when we were young, and so it didn't matter whose barbecue it was, you would just show up and be there, and they would feed you. So it was like a real community where you felt welcome.
And what would you say are some of your favorite memories of Mount Pleasant?
My favorite memories, I would say probably sledding down Mount Pleasant Avenue, because once we got a good snow, and I mean, from young people to old people, we all were out there. It didn't matter what your age bracket was. If you were strong enough to climb up the hill and go down, you would see anybody and everybody on that hill. And the sledding was really extremely fast. So it was exciting days doing sledding. And biking, the kids would get together and we would go on bike hikes through Wayne and back, and so they were enjoyable days.
Is there anything else that we should know about you and your life that we haven't asked?
No, but I do think that education played a major role in at least me and my brother's lives. Going to Conestoga and going to a good school system. Once I got out in the world, I felt like, I could hold my own, and my brothers did quite well too. So education played a role in our lives, but also the willingness and being able to work with people made a major decision. I mean, just helped us get along and do well just by living where we lived. I mean, the main line was good for us that way.
And if you knew then what you know now, is there anything about life that you would want to share with today's society?
Probably learning to live together, but education is the main thing. I mean, without education and without jobs, people are not going to be happy. I mean, regardless. I know when we were younger and we were poorer, there's things you want you can't afford. So that does add a lot of pressure to people, and I think it adds more pressure to kids now. So it's tough when you don't have a job, and it puts a lot of pressure on the young kids. So I know how they feel. I mean, the peer pressure wasn't as great back then, but I know how it is now. I mean, if you don't have a cell phone, you know, we didn't have to worry about stuff like that back then. So education and getting a job, which doesn't always come that easy. That's it.
And would there be any advice that you would give to the generations of today, since it's clearly so different from how you grew up?
Well, the main thing is still going back to education, because without the education and, you know, a good attitude, if you don't have the right kind of attitude, nobody wants to be bothered with you anyway. So I think that having a good attitude and getting an education, and I would also, you know, try to take care of your health when you're young, because it'll pay back, you know. If you don't take care of yourself, it's just going to cause problems later in life.